Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's March 29th, 2021, and today I thought I'd share with you my thoughts on bare root plants versus potted plants. Now, we sell both bare root plants and potted plants. The big advantage to purchasing a potted plant is the visual appeal. You get to see what a plant and its form looks like when it's all leafed out. You can sometimes see them when they have the berries on them as well. And for me, based on experiences I've had in the past, I don't like buying potted plants unless I'm going to plant them early in the spring or late in the fall. And I've gotten to the point where I can pretty much tell what a good form of a tree is, but often when we're first starting, we're more impressed by how the tree looks when we go to Home Depot or Lowe's or Tractor Supply or Country Max or whatever the stores are where you have the trees outside and the bushes outside. When they look all nice and all in their full foliage, or sometimes even with the berries on them, in my opinion, that's not the time to transplant them. It's not the time to transport them without taking some precautions. So in the past, one of the things I've done is I purchased a whole bunch of trees and laid them down in my trailer and put the tarp over the top of them, and still they got wind-blown damage. And you know, the leaves are really important for transpiration, and they get dried out, and it puts a great deal of stress. We also often don't know what the condition is of the roots inside of the pot itself, unless you really take a good look at them when you're picking them up at the store. And understanding what root bound is and whether the taproot has been removed or a taproot ever developed in those plants. So those are convenience is the biggest plus for the buying the potted plants. The other big plus of buying the potted plants, you have the convenience. So if you're buying potted plants like berry bushes and all, things that can, and you recognize the size of the plant itself for the pot that it's in, and you check and you see it isn't just a lot of mulch around inside of the pot, then you have the convenience of keeping it in the pot until fall when the plant goes dormant. The best times to transplant plants is during dormancy, because it doesn't put a lot of extra stress. When you're taking a plant that's fully leafed out, or worse yet, has fruit on it, or is fully flowered, there's a lot of energy going into those leaves and flowers and all. And that's a time that when you're transplanting, that puts a stress on them, especially if you're trying to tease out some of the roots as well. So there's nothing wrong with buying a potted plant. I think they're absolutely great because you have the convenience of waiting. And I would always ask the people at the nursery at the store, can this wait until fall for me to get it into the ground because it's already leafed out or there's flowers on it or whatever. That way we're putting less stress on the plant itself. And it doesn't help to put a whole bunch of fertilizer or put it in an area that you've dug out that's just loaded with compost, as opposed to mixing those soils in, because you're just delaying the amount of stress that potted plant is going to go in. I personally like the bare root plants the most myself, although we do sell potted plants here, but I try to encourage people to transplant them early in the spring or late in the fall. With the bare root plants, they're harvested after they go dormant, often November, December, January, February, depending on what part of the country they're in, and then they're put into sand or some sawdust medium and all. Now these trees are completely dormant at this point, or the plants are completely dormant, and they do what's called healing in. In other words, you're keeping the roots from drying out, you're keeping them moist over the winter time, you're keeping them nice and cool, you're keeping them in sometimes like a root cellar environment, so that those plants aren't extending energy other than like being in a sleep-like state. They're in a dormant state. So we want to have those plants in a dormant state, and so their timing is of the essence. The sooner you can get those bare root plants in the ground, the better. Once the plants are in the ground and they come as dormant and they haven't started putting out the new little, the buds haven't emerged, there's no new stems coming out or new branches coming out on the bare root tree, it hasn't already established a support that it has to maintain. It will maintain its support based on the resources that are in the soil. So I think that if, especially anything sizable of any caliber, then going with bare root is the best. But it's time restricted. You want to get them in very early in the spring, or get them in after they've gone dormant. The other trees are dormant in the fall. Springtime is really good for getting bare roots in the ground, but dormancy, whether it's early spring or late fall, for both potted plants and bare root plants are the best. I hope that I've gone through this and it makes sense to you. It's a matter of timing and convenience, and getting used to looking at plants when they don't have the foliage on them. Actually, that's the ideal time, because once they have foliage on them, it's harder to see the what I would call potentially damaging aspects of the potted plant, where the limbs are crossing each other, and during the wind they'll rub against each other and all. So looking at them when they haven't leafed out yet and the buds are still on them, you can actually see the form of the tree. And you can say, oh, for an apple tree and it has a central leader and this is the way we want it to grow, that'll be great. For a peach tree or whatever, and you want to have like a vase face shape and all, the form that you want, it's much easier to actually see that, especially when you're first learning in a plant that isn't fully leafed out yet. And I think it's the safest way. And transporting them, you always want to keep them under cover when you're transporting them. You want to do it either in the coolest part of the day as possible. You don't want to transplant plants in the heat of the day when things are dry. You want to get your soil conditions ready for the site that you're going to put the plants in beforehand as well. So just a few thoughts to think about when you're contemplating picking up plants from a nursery, from a permaculture site, or from the box store. Just a few thoughts. So if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the description in the area below. If you found this video of value, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and by all means, folks, stay safe and take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye now.